two schoolgirls investigated after suggesting a fellow student smelled like fish. Is this really the best use of police time? Hey guys, Matt Godwin here at GB News. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe. Now, I don't know about you, but it often feels to me as though many of the things that define who we are here in the West are continuously under attack. Our shared history, our sense of identity, our values, our ways of life. And now, as we see in some shocking events here in the UK, free speech, free expression, and individual liberty. Now, I'm going to tell you about a specific policy, a set of measures that you may not have heard about. They're called non-crime hate incidents. Now, this is something straight out of George Orwell's 1984. And the reason I want to tell you about this is because of what's just happened to a journalist here in the UK, Alison Pearson, who works at the Telegraph, and on Remembrance Sunday, a day when we usually remember our ancestors who gave their lives so that we can have these freedoms, Alison Pearson had a knock at the door, and there were two police officers who informed her that somebody had found one of her tweets a year ago, one of her tweets offensive, and that she was being investigated because of perceived hate. Now, what's going on here? Well, in the days after that case, British media, you might have seen, has been flooded with a number of other people saying they too have been investigated for what are called non-crime hate incidents, including a 9-year-old child who was investigated after calling another child at school a rude word, or two schoolgirls who were investigated after suggesting a fellow student smelled like fish. Is this really the best use of police time and resources, you might wonder? What are non-crime hate incidents, I hear you asking? Well, let's say you find what I'm saying offensive, and you perceive that it's offensive to people of a certain race, religion, gender, sexual orientation. You might pick up the telephone and call your local police station and say, I find what Matt Godwin said was offensive. They will then log a non-crime hate incident against me, putting a black mark against my name, which could be revealed if I go for a job where I need to have security clearance, and they might even knock at my door and say, hey, Matt Godwin, you're being investigated for a non-crime hate incident. Could you accompany us to the police station? Yes, this really does happen here in Britain, the home of individual liberty, Magna Carta, and free speech. I know, it's bananas. But Matt, surely you're exaggerating the problem, I hear you say. Well, not so fast. Between 2014 and 2019, 120,000 non-crime hate incidents were reported. 120,000. Between 2019 and 2024, the Free Speech Union estimates that number doubled to 250,000 non-crime hate incidents, 250,000. At the same time as things like burglaries, shoplifting, mobile phone theft and gang violence has basically been mainstreamed and legalized in our society, or at least that's the perception of many people out there in ordinary towns up and down the country. Let me give you one example. Take Essex Police, which investigated Alison Pearson for this non-crime hate incident.
It was Sunday, the 10th of November, just ahead of the big Remembrance Day services about to take place right across our country. And there, at a home in Essex, was Alison Pearson, Daily Telegraph columnist, podcaster, commentator, and I understand she was actually in her gown and slippers when plod, knock on the door. What on earth could this be all about? Well, Alison joins me right now. I've set the scene. What happened?
Yes, there were two young constables by the door, and they said, one said something about a non-crime hate incident, which was a year ago, with me, a social media post a year ago. And I said, well, what was it about, the tweet? Give me an idea of what it said. And he said, I'm not allowed to tell you that. And then I said, who is my accuser? And he said, we're not allowed to tell you that either. But it's not the accuser, it's the victim.
The victim?
The victim. So, Nigel, I had a victim. And, then it was just a very, very surreal and shocking conversation. And because it was Remembrance Sunday, I drew myself up to my full 5 feet, 3.5. And I said, we're here today on a special day commemorating hundreds and thousands of young men your age who laid down their lives for the country so it could be a free country and not live under the jackboot of tyranny. And here you are on Remembrance Sunday coming to my house in something that I considered to be against freedom and tyrannical. And I said, and what would those young men think of you today? So they looked a bit... I think the poor coppers probably thought, we've got a right one here.
But well, they did. But I mean, so they knock at the door, and that's obviously slightly threatening. Not something I suppose you're particularly used to in your life. But they can't tell you what you've done.
No.
They can't tell you who the victim is.
No.
So what are they doing? Just trying to frighten you?
Well, I said to them, how would I defend myself if I don't know any of the relevant details? And they looked a bit, again, a bit confused.
Well, over the last 2 years, Essex Police filed 1,500 of these non-crime hate incidents, while at the same time being criticised for failing to pick up the phone and deal with non-emergency requests. This is a classic example of what I call the luxury belief class. They impose their quirky, wacky ideas on the rest of us, like non-crime hate incidents, while failing to deliver core public services at the same time, like keeping people safe. Because in the world of the elite class, tackling hate, which is broadly defined and becomes so vague it's almost meaningless, that's more important to these people than actually tackling and solving crime. Now, you might be thinking that this is just about these non-crime hate incidents, but I'm here to tell you otherwise. This is actually a symbol of a much broader attack on free speech here in Britain. It's an attack that is coordinated, it's an attack that is growing, and it's an attack that threatens the very foundations of our civilization. Because it's not just the rise of these non-crime hate incidents that are suffocating free speech and the public square here in this country. It's also what we've seen since the immigration protests here in Britain in the summer, in the aftermath of those Southport murders, where little girls were murdered at a Taylor Swift dance class. In the aftermath of those atrocities, we saw many people in this country rounded up and thrown into jail based on views they shared on social media in their own home. Many of those people, of course, went to prison, while many criminals were released from prison in order to make room for them. A situation many people found absolutely outrageous. At the same time, we also learned that Labour activists were working with Democrat activists in America to, and I quote, kill Elon Musk's Twitter. We discovered there was a transatlantic plot to try and shut down social media that radical left progressives find to be difficult or challenging their views. In the same way that they like to pile pressure on new television channels like us here at GB News in order to try and shut down the public square and get rid of people who hold views that they disagree with. This is the very opposite of what free speech and free expression should really be all about. And it doesn't end there, because we've also seen Keir Starmer and the Labour government take on a new Free Speech Act, which, by the way, I helped to deliver and design, which is designed to protect and promote free speech in our universities. It was passed under the previous Conservative government, and Labour have been trying to quietly get rid of this new law behind the scenes, hoping that nobody else notices. Actually, this is another example of how the Labour Party simply doesn't value free speech in our society. It wants to control the flow and the supply of information and data, especially views that run counter to the radical progressive orthodoxy in the legacy institutions. And it doesn't end there, because Labour's Home Secretary Yvette Cooper has also now said that she wants to make it easier, not harder, but easier to file non-crime hate incidents. In fact, what she wants to do is loosen the criteria for them. The previous Conservative government tried to make it harder to file these things. Yvette Cooper has now said she wants to make it easier to file non-crime hate incidents. So listen, the war on free speech is real. It's growing. It's becoming ever more serious by the day. It's likely to accelerate under this Labour government, and it's likely to continue to undermine the very things that define who we are. I'm for free speech. I'm for free expression. I'm for individual liberty. And I suspect you are too. So if you are, hit like and subscribe. Join me in the comments. Let's carry on debating these big issues of the day. See you soon.